All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this podcast here real quick. I've got a great guest here for you today. I try, as you know, on this channel to bring issues of relevance, things that I think people really need to understand what's going on. Even if they don't affect you, it's important to know what your government is doing, what those government agencies are doing, and how different political ideologies are using their power as unelected bureaucrats to affect the professions, many different professions. And I think one of the most dangerous places where we should allow or could allow this political ideology to seep into how people get licensed or are able to work is the medical field. And so today I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Dr. Hensen. I'm going to bring him in right now and welcome you to, I guess, my channel. I don't really have a show. It's just a channel. I heard about your story because I guess the firm that I work for is a firm that you've been working with and trying to help you. Paul is your attorney. He was my supervising attorney. And so before we get completely into like the actual meat, just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do. And then we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, I'm a physician in East Texas. The town I live in is Palestine, Texas. I've been a physician for over 30 years. I've been practicing ear, nose, and throat and head and neck surgery, along with some facial plastic surgery for about 25 years after training. Everything was kind of going swimmingly until just recently. And that's about it. Originally from Michigan, trained at Michigan State as far as medical school, did my specialty training in Detroit and in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I did a little bit of training at the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so you've been doing this for how long? How long have you been a physician? Where'd you go to school?
I've been an ear, nose, and throat doctor after graduation for just about 25 years now, maybe a little over.
Okay. And then, and you did that elsewhere. When did you come to Texas?
I've been in Texas for almost 5 years now.
Okay.
I came here from Alabama via Florida.
Awesome. I've lived in both Alabama and Florida. What part of Alabama was it?
I was in the northeast corner, just above Jacksonville, in a town called Piedmont, right there in the Appalachians, the foothills of the Appalachians. Not too far from Talladega. Right. Loved it.
Gotcha.
Loved
I was up in Huntsville.
Yeah. Hated the storms, though. Oh, my God.
And speaking of storms, just so the neighbors or the viewers understand, you're under a tornado watch. So if something happens, we may have to reconvene this at some other time, but hopefully you're safe there. So sure. The issue right now that you have is, you're trying to get licensed. Explain sort of what's happened with your license right now.
Sure. So back when the what I kindly refer to as the scamdemic started in 2020, Governor Abbott issued a mask mandate for the state. And being an ear, nose, and throat and head and neck surgeon and an airway specialist, I knew from my training as a resident and all through med school that masks were worn for protection for the individual wearing it for, let's say, blood products, sputum, purulent material, whatever. It wasn't to keep bacteria or viruses from entering into our airway. I mean, they're not even considered PPEs by virtue of, how bad they are. And so I'm in a private practice. I did not require masks for myself, the employees, or the patients coming in. We actually had a sign up and said, no mask required. If you feel the need to wear one, that's fine. You'll have to take it off if you want me to examine you, because I can't examine you if you have a mask on. It's kind of like going to a proctology office and not taking your shorts off. A little tough. So, sorry. And We also had, we also offered people, if you're uncomfortable, then we'll be more happy and you think you're more comfortable or you're safer. So I had an individual came in complaining of vertigo or spinning, and she was wearing a mask, and I examined her after she took the mask off. I examined her, and I guess she was upset that I didn't have one nor anybody else. So she reported me to the Texas Medical Board. So they subsequently sent me a letter about 2 months later, thereabouts, claiming that I was in violation of this order. And they called a mandate. And I mean, you're a lawyer, and I'm pretty sure a mandate is only effective if both people do it, not just one. And I gathered all the science that I have, which is roughly 45 to 100 years of science. And these were really good studies. These are random controlled studies. We wrote letters, we did everything. And we finally had a meeting with them in the spring of 21. I think it was in May. And I presented all my literature. They literally said, we don't care. We don't care about your patients. We don't care about your literature. We had a rule and you didn't follow it, and that's all we care about. And they said, and I said, well, I didn't follow it, and here's the reason why. And I gave them all this science. And I had even given them a brand new article that had just been published they used 63 random controlled trials. They ended up only using 3. And it went through every single organ system.
Sorry, you cut out there. After 63 random trial, whatever came after that, you blanked.
They did, yeah. This article had 63 random controlled trials that they looked at. They used 43 of them, okay. Excuse me.
No worries. No worries.
So what ended up happening? I still take my patients' calls. So what ended up happening is that they looked at it for about 2 minutes because it was a very long article. They said the same thing as all the other documentation that I had sent them, and said, again, we don't care. You're in violation. It was black and white to them. There was nothing in between. They didn't care why I did what I did. And I tried to explain to them that this is my sandbox. This is what I play in. And, I'm the expert here. You're not. The doctor they had at that particular time was an obstetrician. You had an obstetrician who doesn't do airways with an airway, a double-boarded airway specialist. So I'm not sure how that even happened. And the fact that they even just had an obstetrician, it was an embarrassment. He had no idea what he was talking about. I'm sure he's great at doing obstetrics, but not what I do. So they found me guilty right away. They deliberated for, I'd say, about 3 minutes, came back and said, you're guilty, and you got to, we'll send you what your penance is. So not during surprised. So I get this back, and they said, you have to do, we're going to fine you $500. We're going to make you take the jurisprudence test. We're going to make you take a bunch of CMEs outside, continuing medical education credits outside your specialty. And we're going to put on your Texas profile that you're an unprofessional doctor and you are you're deceiving the public.
So by presenting studies of 63 randomized studies, as well as other articles and letters, scientific medical letters, you're the problem by Interesting. Okay, keep going.
Because I didn't follow their, in my opinion, draconian and very ill-advised, rule. I mean, it was a spontaneous, it was a political thing. It was just to say we're doing something for the public during this scary time. And so, I was stunned when they actually, said that. So we started to fight. I wouldn't do anything. So in the middle of the summer, they were coming to the point where I had to give an answer. So we kept asking for delays. And then we found an attorney who used to work for the medical board thinking, okay, we've got somebody that's got inside baseball on it. He's going to be able to weed through this. And so he went and talked to him, and he's a very nice man, went and talked to him. And he said, okay, they're going if you leave them alone, they will leave you alone. And at the very end, they said, well, no, we're not going to do that now. What we're going to do now is that It'll be a non-disciplinary action. However, you have to do those three things or four things, or the three things plus put your name on the medical board website. And I refused initially. And then that's when this got crazy, meaning that then they started, the lawyer had started saying, listen, if you do this, it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And at the time, it was a brand new practice. And we were kind of picking up the pieces from the other doctor. So we were on a knife's edge as it was. And then they said, you'll get reported to the National Practitioners Data Bank, which is basically, it's like the principal's office. The problem with that is if it gets there, insurance companies look at it and will say, okay, they'll drop you as a provider. So now I can't get those patients to come to the office. So they can literally put you out of business just by virtue of that. So by scaring,
let me pause you there for a minute, if I could. Yeah, if I could, real quick, because we've now got an association, a licensing organization, essentially the fourth branch of government these days of unelected bureaucrats who they don't handle your patients. They don't handle the types of patients. They don't perform the same type of medical procedures that you do. So they don't have the same expertise in ear, throat, nose type issues. You're there as the expert, having done this for decades. And now what they're essentially saying is that you are a danger to your patients. Let me ask you this. How many of your patients died for not wearing a mask in your office?
So that's a great question. And this is what I've actually, we told them in the meeting is of all the patients that came in, I don't know of one that contracted anything in our office. I don't know one that have ever passed away. I took care of patients not only in the area I'm at, but I also was one of those frontline doctor types that treated people all over the country, and over thousands of patients, not one went to the hospital and not one passed away.
That's kind of what I thought. And not only that, but I think the legal field in some esoteric ways are very much like the medical field, in the sense that so when you, what was I got to say here? I just lost my train of thought. When you here it is. In the medical field, are the answers out there? I mean, do doctors pretty much know everything about everything medical related, about germs, about bacteria, is there nothing left to learn in the medical field?
Well, and that was the problem with this one, with this particular virus, be it man-made or natural, in my opinion, and I think it was constructed. We had treatment, and one of the beauties of being a free-thinking person, and more importantly in my field, a doctor, meaning that I don't have to listen to a bureaucrat. I don't have to listen to a hospital administrator. I don't have to listen to a group of doctors and say, we have to do it this way. I was able to do what was out there, read the literature, because you're constantly learning. That's why we have these articles constantly coming out. And even the Cochrane report that it was supposed to come out in 2020 to say that masks don't work, the editor refused to send it out for political reasons. The mask would never have come out or never been an issue if this report was out. And then when it did get published, I think a few months ago or last year, it was just recently, the editor apologized for the people that wrote it. And so now Dr. Jefferson and his colleagues that wrote it said, no, they don't work, period. And so that's what you're dealing with. And so we're constantly
not for COVID,
learning.
Right? Not for COVID transmission. We're talking.
Oh, for everything. A virus is a virus. Okay. Viruses have a certain size, and these masks don't stop anything. I mean, I kindly refer to them as a crocheted condom. I mean, they're not going to stop anything. They might give you warm and fuzzies, but they're not going to do anything for you. But they will.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought, and then I'll ask the question.
Well, what I would say is when people wear a barrier, they constantly breathe in and out the same things. And what you do is you increase the viral load into the nasal pharynx. That was the problem. There was a study that came out last year, albeit an observational study. But what the doctor found is the counties in Kansas that wore masks versus the counties that didn't, there was a 50% increase in death for the counties that wore masks because they were recirculating the bacteria, or excuse me, the virus,
Right.
and they were increasing the viral load. And when you breathe through a mask, you breathe in harder and deeper, so you get it down into your lungs farther, which makes the infection much worse. And you create what's called a low oxygen or anoxic environment, which knocks out part of our immune system called the T lymphocyte CD4 plus cells. So if those get knocked out, then you have a greater chance of having a much worse infection. And this has all been well known. We've known this for decades.
Right.
But for some reason it became political, and everybody says you got to mask up. The problem is when you mask up, your eyes are still open. Well, guess what? The virus gets in just as easily there. It's the same thing with social distancing. They made that up. An aerosolized virus can go by average about 30 meters or 97.5 feet. They made that number up. Viruses can hang in the air upwards of 4 months. They were just kind of making stuff up.
And I want to, so, there are probably going to be some people watching this video. And of course, they're the the statist pro-maskers, the commies that think that they have all the answers, even though they've probably didn't even graduate high school. But they know exactly what CNN has told them, and they know what Dr. Fauci has told them. So, they're probably thinking, and I'm going to ask this stupid question. I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask it on behalf of your critics. Okay, if masks don't work, why even wear a mask during surgery? Let's placate them and explain that.
Yeah, I get that. In fact, on Tuesday, I got that question from a physician. Now, again, the physician on the board this time was a family practice / sports medicine / ER doctor. The reason we wear masks in surgery is for a barrier for us, not for them. It's the same reason why I wear eye goggles in surgery. It's to protect body fluids from getting into my mouth and my eyes. It's not for me spitting into the wound.
Are you sure your eyes aren't going to like spit out venom like a lizard at your patient?
Well, I get laser beams, actually. I'm a laser beam one.
Yeah.
I just it's such a great question because half the time, if not more, I don't wear a mask in surgery. In fact, there's now studies coming out in orthopedic rooms where you have to be really careful because of artificial joints. Anybody not involved right with the patient care isn't supposed to wear a mask because you sweat in the mask, you have condensation, which increases bacterial, viral, and fungal elements. So they're now recommending don't wear them unless you're in direct contact with a patient. Now, if you're talking or you sneeze or something like that, you could get droplets, but that would be highly unusual. But if I'm putting in an ear tube in an ear, I'm not going to put a mask on. I'm not going to use sterile gloves. It's a clean case. I don't need to. And even in some of my longer cases, they've done numerous studies on physicians that work, so many hours when wearing a mask, their oxygen level drops and their decision-making process can drop because you become anoxic. You get low oxygen, which makes you goofy. And I have seen it. I've been in cases upwards of 14 to 16 hours straight. And you're in there working, I can guarantee you get tired from breathing through those things.
I hate my CPAP. I can't imagine to wear that. And I remember in combat, I'll go back to basic training. In basic training, you have to go through the gas chamber, and because we're supposed to get confidence in the equipment that the military has given us. So here we are wearing a nuclear, biological, and chemical mask that's supposed to protect us from nuclear, biological, and chemical agents, right? And then you put on this mask, you go into the gas chamber. It's full of CS gas, and you have to do several things. The first thing is, they try to show the mask works. So, hey, look, you are in the CS chamber. Well, it definitely cuts out most of it, but you still get the runny nose because even the mask that we wear that's supposed to protect soldiers from NBC attacks, again, nuclear, biological, chemical, they're not 100% foolproof the way that they are. And so you could still already, by the time once they even open the door, you can smell the CS gas. And then what they do is they have you lift up the mask. You take a deep breath, you lift up the mask, You put the mask down, then you're supposed to clear it, and try to push everything out. And, if that doesn't work, and CS gas is a much larger particle than most viruses out there, and you're talking about this giant mask that can't even keep out things like, gas particles versus the kind of stuff that you're buying at 7-Eleven, with the American flag on it that you're sticking on your face. And, if you can smell it.
You bring up a really good point, because the average virus size is 1,000 times smaller than a human hair.
Right. And I mean, and those masks, even the N95 is not, the gaps at the microscopic level are wider than most viruses.
And they're far wider. And even N95s did maybe this much better, but they still suck. And they're not going to stop you from getting it. They did studies where people that were out and about versus the ones that locked themselves down. They were studies that wore masks versus people that didn't. The people that locked themselves down and wore masks were far sicker. And it has to do with that. I mean, you got that big joke with people driving down the road in the car by themselves wearing a mask. These are the same people that, go to bed by themselves and put a condom on, So, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I go ahead.
Well, I'll say, and so this
no,
brings us back to.
I don't know how this got so out of hand. It's just ridiculous.
And that's what it brings us back to, is this idea. We talk about all these studies, and look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not even close to a doctor. But I know how to read. I know how to understand. And I have read not all of the studies out there, because I ain't got that kind of time. I'm reading legal briefs. But when all of this stuff was coming out there, we heard from both sides. We heard that masks are good, masks are bad. 6 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, stay away. You can't go outside. You can't, don't go to, whatever. And so there's all this stuff out there, but now you've got essentially a political organization that's taken this politicized idea of masks. And I'm not, and I don't think you are either. I'm not necessarily anti-mask. I mean, if I've got a cold, I don't want to go out where somebody is and start, spreading my germs all over the place. And if I lived in Japan for about 7 years of my life, and, the Japanese, when they're sick, if they have to go out in public, they put a mask on. Now it's not foolproof, but what it does is it keeps those droplets, like you said, if they end up having to sneeze or their nose is running, or at least it keeps the big stuff out. But this idea that we can, like what you said, this is for our protection. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you this question, because I heard this a lot, that if you're not wearing a mask, you don't care about people. Has there ever been an incident in history where someone who did not have a particular virus or disease, did not have it at all? I'm not talking about symptoms. I'm just talking about didn't have it. Is it possible in any situation to spread a virus that you don't have?
If you're not showing any symptoms, even though that you may have the virus and you're not showing any symptoms of being ill, the transmission is basically zero. There's plenty of studies to prove that. You can't make another person sick if you're not sick.
Right.
Does that make sense?
And I'm saying not even just symptoms. I'm saying if I don't have the virus, I've taken the test, I've been looked at, I do not have the virus. Can I spread a virus that I don't have?
No.
I didn't think so. I just thought it was me. Like I said,
you bring up a good point. People say, well, you don't care about me. Well, okay, that's like you putting a coat on to keep me warm when I'm outside in the wintertime. It does nothing. I mean, I don't know.
That's like taking away my car to stop drunk driving.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't. I don't know how this stuff gets so out of hand, but again, I have to look at the school system and some of the people that maybe are teaching these folks, or being, in my opinion, being brainwashed, because we no longer have critical thinking. We've lost critical thinking in med school. I've seen it. I've seen it in training, and I see it in high school where they're just spoon-fed everything. You do this, pass the test, and move on, where they're not teaching them how to think logically.
So, you are a doctor. You used your medical experience, your medical research, looking into studies on this issue. The studies have are overwhelmingly, if not conclusively, in the field or on the side of masks don't do anything, especially with this, with regard to this. You're trying to protect your patients because the evidence shows that long-term wearing of these masks is not good for many different ways. And because you care more about your patients than the bureaucracy, which is what I thought doctors were supposed to do, just like, you know, an attorney, his first priority and his first duty and loyalty is to his client, period. That's his first duty. And of course, in a legal, ethical way. And so they've denied. Now, do you just have a preliminary denial, or have they officially said, we're not licensing you? And now where are we?
We're suspended. So they didn't revoke
you're
it. They just,
suspended.
Yeah, I'm completely suspended. For some reason now, because I did what was right, not only from a medical standpoint, but from, you know, to protect your patients. They deemed it because I didn't follow their rule. And then after I didn't follow the rule, I didn't do what they wanted me to do, which I had a hard time doing that. I mean,
so what are your next? Yeah, what are your next steps right now?
So we're getting ready to file the you know, the injunction or the restraining order in order to stop this, and then we're gonna in order to, so I can start working again, is okay, go through all the hoops they want us to. And then, you know, now we're looking at what basically legal action for what they've done to me. You know, professionally, I can't quantify having that on my website, that I'm an unprofessional doctor and that I've deceived the public. Who knows how much business I've lost.
Oh yeah, and so that's absurd. We live in an age. I'm sorry to cut you off, doctor, but that you are deceiving the public and that you're an unprofessional doctor because you literally use studies that support that scientific peer-reviewed studies that support your position as a medical professional. And yet the fact that we see now, you know, in hindsight, some of us knew this ahead of time,
because you're smart.
See now in hindsight, yeah, that everything that we were told was lie after lie. Okay, I won't even go as far as a lie. It was just wrong. They were just wrong. Okay, I won't even go so far.
No, you're right. You're right. Dr. Birx, when she wrote her book, she says, we made this stuff up. We lied about it. They knew that this didn't work, but they were controlling people. For me, that was the first trial balloon. If we can get you to follow the mask, we're going to get you to take something we know is bad for you because we've seen the studies. And my background is molecular biology. I did a lot of genetics. In fact, I almost did a PhD doctor track. And I was so into it. And you probably know who Ryan Cole is. He's with
Ryan
who? And all those guys. They're kind of the big names up there. Ryan Cole. He's a pathologist. He trained at Mayo. He's in. Anyways, I was talking to Ryan about 2.5 years ago, and we were talking about the shot. I said, you know, Ryan, if they get this thing out, look at 80 to 60 months, and you're going to start seeing people die from it or have really bad times. And right on schedule, it was doing it because I did that. The experimental shot was DNA, and you start injecting DNA into people, or I'm sorry, mRNA, you're going to have a really bad time. I told everybody, if you don't believe me, look at the mad cow disease, because eventually that went through reverse transcriptase, became part of DNA, got plugged in cow's DNA. Oh man. Oh, are we back?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think
it became part of the DNA. Yeah, it became part of the DNA. And then when the cows that were having baby cows, the baby cows were born with mad cow disease. So they had to sacrifice all those cows. My question is, are we going to start having kids being born with the spike protein. Okay, so who's going to start whacking the kids? I mean, this is crazy what they've done.
Right.
It's frightening in my opinion. Go ahead.
Well, and what scares me is we have heard so many people in high places, whether it be Bill Gates, who funds a lot of scientific research, so non-medical people, billionaires like Bill Gates, and then you've got political hacks like Dr. Fauci and others who have said in the past that we have an overpopulation problem, and now here we have this coming up. And I'm not so much of a conspiracy theorist, but I can see what's in front of my face. And this is when you start adding all this stuff together, you have to wonder what you just said, because I worry about my kids, because my kids don't, obviously I've raised them right, but they're not the kinds of fighter that I am. And because of what they do, my daughter's in nursing school, my son works for the USDA, and they were essentially browbeaten into getting the shot, and getting the vaccine. And so I worry about their kids. And I worry about them too, because they're young, and there are so many people that are just, this died suddenly thing that's going on. And I pay a lot of attention to that, and it does bother me. And then what is going to happen when we're starting to pass this stuff on from generation to generation, and this stuff continues to morph, and you got these spike proteins that are out there, clotting up your blood, causing strokes, causing heart attacks. I just don't understand how we got to a point where we allowed this to happen to us, and now why people aren't up in arms like they should be over the fact that you, a medical professional, you're doing what's right for your clients. I can go to 3 different doctors with a problem, and they'll probably have 3 different ways to solve the problem. That doesn't mean that 2 of them deserve to be unlicensed, or to be cast as unprofessional, or anything like that. And yet that's exactly what they're doing. Is, it's our way or the highway. And I'm reading this great book. I know I sent this to you, and I think there's the Declaration of Independence talks about, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And, it goes back to the Lockean pursuit of property. And in order to get property, you have to have the means to be able to obtain property. And so there's this new push that I hope, well, actually, I know that they're looking at, because I'm actually kind of on the side helping with your case a little bit, with some of the research. But the this idea of a right to earn a living, and even if it's not prescribed specifically in the Constitution, it's right there in the 9th Amendment, and it's memorialized in our Declaration of Independence, where it talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How can you pursue happiness if you don't have a right to work, if you don't have a right to earn an income, to use your labor in order to better yourself, to use your wit, your intelligence, your skills? If you don't have the right to do those things, how can you have a right to happiness? And so I think there's a lot of, I guess the only good thing that's come out of this whole, masking and vaccine thing, and the fact that, what really turned me off to it was the fact that there were so many people that took this so personally, that I, as an individual, refused to wear a mask, or I, as an individual, refused to stay in my house. I took some friends, I remember, a nearby county, McLennan County, or I'm sorry, not McLennan County, the other county just northwest of here. They were saying during the height of all this, we're not going to let anyone come or go from our county, because we're going to stop this flow of COVID and all that. And
air, so they're going to stop the flow of air.
Yeah. So I literally grabbed up some buddies, like, hey, you guys want to go for a walk in another county? Let's see them try to prevent us and our right to travel. And we went out there.
That's called the First Amendment.
Yes.
Your freedom of assembly.
Yep. And we did it. I mean, we violated their unlawful, unconstitutional rule. And we went to a county that supposedly we weren't allowed to be in, just to show that we were free Americans, and try to tell other people, look, just because the government says something, if it's unlawful or unconstitutional, it means nothing. An unlawful, unconstitutional law is no law at all, according to the Supreme Court. So, well, actually, according to the Constitution, but the Supreme Court has clarified that for those that don't read the Constitution.
What a concept.
So, yeah. So, I guess let's get back to a little bit more personal thing here, because this is what's lost on a lot of people. Even in the chat, we got morons here. Oh, Dr. Death and what was it? I think. Well, never mind. I blocked him, so now all his comments are gone. But this idea that if you don't comply, you're the problem. But you haven't hurt anybody. I asked you who you've killed. Nobody's been killed. Nobody's contracted any viruses in your office. But that's the science. But this isn't about science. This is about politics. And I'm so thankful.
It's interesting
for men like you.
The number one way of spreading infections still is your hands. Wash your hands. I probably wash my hands upwards of 90 plus times a day. That is how you spread this. Even inanimate objects don't get people sick. So when you go in there and you wipe down everything after the room after the patient leaves, there's no studies that will prove that, and that's where it comes from. But we do it because it's everybody sees it. It's almost just for visual effect. But for whoever's saying that Dr. Death and all this, these are just, it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch that kind of stuff.
I love this comment. I just put this comment up, and this is a great point. I don't know if you can see this or not. Whatever side you're on, people knew that your office was mask free. They had the option to go anywhere they want. That should have been the end of it.
Yep. We even had them sign a waiver saying, yeah, look here, if you're okay with it, sign here. And they still complain. I mean, they could have gone anywhere they wanted. I would have been more than happy. I understand people, not everybody is for everybody, and I get it. I've been very fortunate for the people who have shown up, but for the most part, there was a couple of people. I got tagged several times for using ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. And well, guess what? We all now know it works. It works beautifully. My wife was sick, very, very sick. I ran and got her the hydroxy and the ivermectin, and by the end of the day, we were having a nice little dinner, and she wasn't sick at all. The stuff is amazing. I mean,
well, I know. Are you sure she didn't turn into a horse?
Yeah, she didn't. And shockingly enough, it's funny when people they make that comment. I'll say, well, do you know where 90% of our antibiotics go to? They go to chickens and cows and things like that. That's how they fatten them up. It's really kind of funny how we do stuff, and yet we don't care about that. So
well, I know that. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I know that you're in good hands. It's an uphill battle that you've got to fight. Stay the course. I've spoken to you offline. I'm either the legal version of you or you're the medical version of me. I'm obviously involved in my own fight with a licensing agency. But I think it's important, and let me ask you this. Throughout this process, because I know it's hard. You've been in this field for years. You're well trained. You've passed all the tests that you're required to pass. You've taken all the training and the continuing education necessary to be an expert in your field. You've done everything you can do. And then there's this bureaucratic group of individuals who are saying, yeah, but we don't think you're good enough. And I know that's hard. What has been the reaction from like fellow doctors? Are you getting a lot of support? Are you getting a lot of pushback? Are they telling you, look, doc, just apologize and move on. Everything will be good. Just go along to get along. What's been the response?
Well, I've heard that. I've heard that more often than not, and they're usually from doctors that are employed because they have that mindset where they don't want to lose their job. And I'll be honest with you, I make probably 70% less than I could if I worked for the man. But I don't have that gene in me to go along to get along. And so it doesn't work real well. I've had a lot of support from people outside the state and from some inside the state, some docs. I had a very nice call from a doctor down in Florida who has offered his services to be a professional witness for us if we need somebody in the same field I'm in. Because I'm sure there's some Kool-Aid drinking ENTs out there that just, hey, this is going to work. But just massive of science behind this. And I'm not talking a little bit. It is massive. From the Dr. Meehan studies, the Rancourt paper, Dr. Russell Blaylock wrote a very nice paper on that. I mean, it is just shocking the amount of information, and people still to this day can't wrap their head around this. And I don't know how that's even possible, where they continually just say, no, they still work, or like the guy that wrote in, Dr. Death or whatever. And it was interesting. A lot of people call Fauci Dr. Death and all that, but it's interesting. I don't think Dr. Fauci ever took care of patients. And they say, well, he's an immunologist. He's not. And the reason he joined the National Health Institute isn't because, he wanted to serve there. He was during the Vietnam era. So he is actually part of what they refer to as the Yellow Beret Brigade. In other words, he pussed out and he joined them so he didn't have to go to Vietnam. I'm not kidding you. I read that. So whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. But he's in a position that he shouldn't be in. He's unqualified. And is late or early, back in the early 2000s, he wrote a paper saying that masks don't work. All of a sudden now they work. They magically work 20 years later.
Well, and he was in the media. He was in the media saying they don't work. And then when it was politically feasible to change his mind, not scientifically, but politically, that's what he did, because he wanted, more power. And the problem that we have in this country right now is, regardless of what side you're on, it's very difficult to go up against the status quo. Mm-hmm. If you're not a conventional status quo individual in any field, you're the problem. And because we've become a society of drones where everything is force fed to us, and it's force fed to us through 24/7. Yeah.
You and I talked about this previously. That is how you learn, when you start thinking outside the box. That medicine, as much as it is an art, as much as it is a science, we have certain kind of ear drops that we use. And prior to those drops coming out, we used to take the antibiotic, crush it up, put it in some saline, and put it in the ear. Well, a company said, okay, that works really well. I'm just going to make probably billions of dollars. And that's great. Good for them. They thought, they got the idea from us and did it. But that's how you do it. Now we know that ivermectin works in very different ways. It's got 4 ways that it took out the virus. So the virus couldn't get around it, which is why it was so successful. We now are seeing studies where it can actually attack certain cancer cells. This is how we learn things. But when we stifle that, then you're going to get the same thing over and over again. If you don't believe me, look at England. That's why they don't have very good success rates in certain pathologies like prostate cancer, breast cancer. It's because they have a certain way of doing it. We can't go outside the box. And that's why a lot of the innovation still comes from here, because capitalism is still boss. It really is. People are always trying to figure something out. I mean, can you imagine if our founders said, oh my God, we can't fight the largest army in the world. We can't do that. We're just going to all lay down. Where would we be? We talked about that earlier. We had a bunch of very brave people stood up against the largest army in the world at the time, created the greatest nation that's ever been on the planet. And they won because of thinking outside the box. I mean, think about that. I mean, it's incredible. And these guys sacrificed all. If you read the stories of some of these guys, most of them died penniless.
Yep. And that's and unfortunately, that's so when you stand up that way, when you stand up like that, you're taking a hit. This isn't financially feasible to you because not only are you not making an income, but now you're having to, pay people like me, attorneys, to fight for what you shouldn't have to be fighting for to begin with. And,
and my wife and I have been fighting this for 3 years. It's drained everything we have. It's drained the office, and now we're in the process of raising money through these Give, Send, Go accounts. And I know people say, "Oh my God, you're a doctor." And people think I sweat money. It's not like that anymore. Doctors don't make a lot of money anymore. I mean, I know pediatricians that are making $75,000 in big cities.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, as a specialist, we do, our salaries are a little higher, but I'm independent. So I have to rely, I've got to pay everything. And I chose to be that way. So I guess I could be independent I could be an independent free thinker, but the reimbursement is not there anymore. I mean, if somebody told you told somebody, I'm going to represent you and you owe me $100 and they gave you $50 and you'll say, well, no, I said $100. Well, that's how it is for me. If I charge $1, some insurances will pay me 20 cents on the dollar, but it costs me $1 to see the patient. And patients don't understand that. We have staff, we got building, we got medicine, I got equipment, I've got scopes. In my particular specialty, I have a lot of gizmos. Microscope. My microscope alone costs $45,000. I don't get reimbursed for that. That is that is part of doing business, and I'm okay with that. Because I signed up for it. I'm not going to bitch about it. I signed up for it. But, when I hear people say, well, you're raising money, you really don't need it. You're a doctor, you're probably playing golf too much, which I don't do, by the way. On weekends, I'm actually a farmer. And so it's silly things like that. But when these bureaucrats will just bury you with legal, and that's what they're doing. Or they'll put you, they'll get these, these national practitioners data bank, and the insurance companies will say, well, geez, you're a bad doctor. I mean, I've already had 2 insurance companies plus my malpractice carrier question me. They go, what is this all about? And one insurance company, when I told them it was about the mask, the lady goes, okay, just the fact that you fought back on that. She goes, I'm just going to tell everybody at the insurance company that you're a good guy and just to move forward. But I mean, I literally, it took us 2 days. I think it was Cigna. They weren't gonna put us on as a provider. I mean, I would have lost a big chunk of business. But that is the power of these clowns. And we talked earlier, these agencies, these licensing people said, we're going to give you a license. Like you did, I went to school. I did 4 years of undergraduate, 4 years of medical school, 5 years of postgraduate training. 5. And so why do I need them? I've passed 5 sets of boards. 2 of them, actually, I passed 6 because I retook my specialty boards again so I could get a Texas license, even though I wasn't required to because I grandfathered in. All it is a shakedown. Every so many years, it's a shakedown to give them money so you can have the right to do that. And in my opinion, and there's now a big push with your law firm, is that we're going to start going after the Federation of State Medical Boards. Because in my opinion, they're communists or they're socialists, and they're there to take you down. They want to shake you down. It's nothing more than laundry or money laundering. Why do we have it? What are they doing?
Exactly, and it's not about the protection of the client, because the complaint that when you really go back down to the root of it, no one complained that they were hurt. No one complained that you hurt them. They complained that you didn't do or wear a piece of cloth that they wanted you to wear.
Exactly. I mean, the irony of that. Well, it's beautiful. The irony of the
court for somebody, and they said, they filed a complaint because I wore a blue tie instead of a red tie to court. That's literally what the equivalent is.
That's exactly it. And the lady, the first lady that complained, the irony is she came in because she was off balance and vertiginous. Well, she's wearing a mask. It decreases your oxygen, which increases your CO2. And guess what the first symptom is? Dizziness. And I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But the problem is, you've got these little YouTubers, or you've got these phone jockeys that just look something up, or they want to bitch to somebody. And this is what we end up, and they don't realize downstream. And that's the problem. Everybody does. They look here. They don't look down here. The damage that they're causing. If they take me out, that I'm the only specialist in this county. And
and that's what's actually hurting your clients. That's what's actually hurting patients, is the fact that they're removing a specialist from the entire county.
And I'm the only one in this immediate area that can do an emergency airway efficiently and probably safely and quickly. I hate to do them. I'll be honest with you. The last one I did, it took me about 80 seconds to get the airway. And people go, well, 80 seconds. And I said, yeah, 80 seconds. And I cut through everything to get it. She did fine. But I mean, that's what I'm trained to do. And it's even under the best of circumstances, which is what that one was, it's still, everybody was freaking out in the room, because we've got somebody's life on the line right there and then. And you just kind of go into your mode like you do, or like anybody else in their profession. And I don't care if it's an electrician, a plumber, whatever. Once you get into that little zone of what you do, or if there's an emergency, people tend to kick into a different gear and they do their job. It's the same thing, but you're right. Now people potentially can be hurt because I'm not in the game right now. And this person has taken it out. And then the medical board, because I probably have hurt their feelings and they don't want to admit they're wrong, is what this is about. It's like, give it up. I'm not trying to say you're wrong or I'm right. It's just saying, here's the literature. You didn't follow it. You should have, and you made a bad decision. People will forgive you a lot quicker if you say you're sorry and say, I was wrong. I made a mistake. I was doing what we thought was right. Maybe you should come and be part of my team. And I even offered somebody today that spoke with Greg Abbott today. I said, why don't you offer that I can be on his medical team? Because obviously whoever he took, something from was wrong. And again, do what Governor Kristi Noem did in South Dakota. She didn't institute it. She says South Dakotans will do what's right for them. That's what you need.
Well, Dr. Hensen, I just wanted to share another comment here that I liked. Even though they truly thought they were doing the right thing then, even if they did, they have to see that it makes no sense now to keep the sanctions up. And the problem is they're not thinking rationally; they're thinking politically. I have found that all too often these associations are unwilling to admit mistakes. They want you to apologize when you make mistakes, and they want to hold you accountable when they make mistakes. But by golly, these people are like walking Christ on earth right now, perfect. And I don't mean to disparage or be blasphemous, but essentially that's what they think, that we can do no wrong because we are the board. Yeah.
And that's what you have there. This is pride right now in the way of common sense. And I wrote a lot of letters for people that were in bad situations for mask or the shot. And I would write the letter and say, these people have a condition called CFS. And, the patient will go, well, what is that? I said, well, they can't ask you what it is. I said, but I'll tell you what condition you have. I said, you have common effing sense. And I said, but they can't ask you because it's a HIPAA violation. And, the patient goes, I can't, oh my God, I can't, don't do it. And I said, I will back it up. I said, this is ridiculous. I had one lady, she had 3 kids. She was a single mom, and they tried to take her job. That's inexcusable in America. That's inexcusable anywhere. And so, most of my patients have my cell number. Most of them know where I live. I've done house calls for patients, and I'm supposed to be a specialist. I don't care. At the end of the day, I'm a person, and one day I'm going to be in that chair. And what I want to run into somebody like me that isn't going to be a jerk about it. Oh, I'm a doctor. I could care less. I can tell you right now, I can't wait to get home and my dogs, I can't play with my dogs.
So, you're a fighter. We need more of those. I don't think anyone goes and, thinks, well, gee, I've got this problem. I wonder what the board would think about it. It's what's best for my patient. That's the mark of a good doctor. You have that mark. I will tell you, and I'm a little obviously I'm a little biased because I love Paul to death. You've got a great attorney. He is a fighter as well. He's been kind of where you've been. He's had to fight the system. You're having to fight the system. You've got his entire firm. That's why when I did my supervisory license, I wanted to work for Paul because I knew he was a fighter. I wanted to work with someone who was a fighter. I had an opportunity to work with some big law firms that had offered me some jobs, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to make a lot of money. I want to make a lot of difference. And that sounds like what you want to do as well. And you've got a great legal team. And just so you know, Paul didn't ask me to do this. Amy didn't ask me to do this. When I heard your story and, they were asking me to help out with looking into certain things, I was like, you know what? Hey, would he be interested in doing a podcast? Let's talk about this. Let's let people know that we've got these bureaucratic organizations that are hurting people, not you. They're hurting your patients. In my case, they're hurting my potential clients because every time someone's rights are violated and they say, CJ, I've got this problem, I have to go, sorry, can't help you right now.
Because well, it's interesting. You bring up a really good point. Today it's me. Tomorrow it could be one of your listeners. And that's what the people who are listening to this or watching this need to understand, that, yeah, today it's me. And yeah, today I'm asking for money, or I'm asking for someone to make a phone call to, the attorney general. I want somebody to make a phone call to Greg Abbott. I want somebody to make a phone call from the lieutenant governor. I want those phone calls and say, enough is enough. Leave this guy alone. He didn't do anything. Wipe his record clean. And you've seen the evidence that Amy has found. This was all done after fact, after he rescinded everything. So they don't have a leg to stand on. And I'm trying to give them an out, but they just keep digging a hole, and I got to give them credit for it. But everybody listening to this, one day you may be in this position. You better hope you have a CJ in the corner. And that's what they don't get, because one day they're going to come for you. And if you let these groups and let this tyranny continue, then you are in a peck of trouble. Because one of the things that I say, everybody, is Charles de Montesquieu, who is the father of our economic and political system, said it best: is the tyranny of a prince within an oligarchy is not so dangerous as the apathy of the individual within a democracy. And you've got a lot of apathy right now in this country, because they're saying, well, somebody else will do it. I've got my own problems like that. No. Because it came knocking at my door. This isn't my first battle with certain people, but this one's been pretty intense. And we've been going on for 3 years. I've now come out from underneath the shadows because I tried to do it the right way, and it didn't work. I was nice and do all that. I'm done. And enough is enough.
And the number of people, I'm sure you've heard it too. And this is what causes me to have to fight even harder. Because there's a bill right now that would help, at least in my field. And I think we need to fix it. I sent it to Amy. She can work on it for the medical side, but it's too late to get new bills filed during the legislative session. But if I do nothing and I'm fighting for this bill, it's not going to help me. I'm already in this fight, but I want to make sure that people behind me, and you want to make sure that people behind you, don't have to deal with what we're dealing with in the future. And nothing pisses me off more than when I'm told by some lawyer, look, CJ, just apologize, man. You'll get licensed. Fight the fight after your license. No, the fight is now. The fight is the license process itself. If we've got to prostrate ourselves and lick the feet of our masters that are violating our right to earn a living for something that we're trained to do. I finished top 10 in my class. I passed all my exams, just like you passed all your exams. But I can't, we can't work in our position because we're unconventional in how we take care of our respective clients. It's nonsense. I'm sorry it's happening to you, but I'm telling you, and I know exactly how stressful this is for you and for your wife, because your wife has to sit here and watch what you're going through, and she probably feels helpless about it. I know my wife feels helpless, and it's very destructive. What they're doing is not just about our profession and how we earn a living, but it affects our personal life too, because it's affecting our happiness. It's affecting our thought processes. Gosh, at what point maybe I should apologize? Maybe I should, and then you start selling out your own principles. But you're not doing that. We're not going to do that. And I just, urge you to keep fighting and use the strength that the Lord has given you. I will tell you that I firmly believe that even though I wish we didn't have as many trials in life, God prepares certain people for certain fights, and he doesn't give you more than you can handle. I don't know if you're a Christian man or not, but I firmly believe that God will not give you or me or any of us any more than we can handle, but Satan is going to tell us that he did. And the opposition is going to tell us that we did, and that we just need to capitulate, and we just need to get in line, and we just need to do as we're told, and take off our hat and put on theirs, and everything will be fine. It'll be great. And we cannot do that in a free society. Anything you want to end with? I wanted to kind of keep this around an hour. Didn't want to take up too much of your time.
No, I just want to again thank you, and I want to thank your listeners and the people watching. But I also want them to understand that. Sorry, my dog. I want them to understand that we're here for a reason. I want them to go out, proselytize to what we're talking about right now. That if you don't fight for your rights today, you're not going to have them tomorrow. And it's a struggle every day. I think Ronald Reagan said it best. He said, we're one generation away from losing our freedoms. And we are really, really, really close right now. When you've got the, people going off the dollar for a money, if you've got now a former sitting president being hounded by a government in New York, I mean, these are dangerous times. And like I told somebody yesterday, it's dangerous for everybody because there's more conservatives and we're more heavily armed. And I don't say that tongue in cheek. I mean, this could be a powder keg. And sorry.
That is a beautiful dog, by the way.
Yeah, he's a stray. He showed up one day. He's a Turkish Akbaş. And he stayed on our farm, and he keeps pretty much, there's not a coyote or a pig ever to be found on this farm because of Hank. But the people listening to this, go out there and talk about it and spread the word what's happening to me. For obviously that's a selfish thing, but I got to get past this. And it's just a matter of this not letting ever happen to ever again. And that's why that's why you have to get rid of the medical board. And that's Bob Hall, who you may or may not know, Senator Bob Hall.
Oh yeah, Senator Hall.
Yeah. So Bob has really carried the torch on this, and he's got several bills along with Brian Harrison, who are trying to dismantle the this board and basically neuter their power, along with not letting the governor have the power to institute emergency measures, because our founders fought for not having a king. So you got one person making, this is what we're going to do. No, you sit down in a room with a bunch of people who have different ideas, because again, what happens downstream, what may seem like a good idea today on Monday, but Wednesday we could all be underwater. So think about what you do when you when you do these and turn things on. So, but I appreciate you having me on. It's been awesome.
I really appreciate you coming on, and again, for having the intestinal fortitude to keep up this fight. I will pray for you and the strength to continue doing and being given whatever strength you need to continue doing the right thing. This is truly a fight of good versus evil, and right and wrong, really. We don't even need to worry about right or left, because this affects the left and the right, regardless. Your patients don't care, or shouldn't care anyway. If you can heal them, it shouldn't matter what the politics are, but they should know that they're getting the best. And when you're taking the best based on the kinds of nonsense that they're doing with you, I agree. Abolish the medical board. I think the board of law examiners also needs to be severely limited. I do understand you don't want physicians that are going to hurt patients or that are a risk to patients. You don't want lawyers who are going to hurt their clients and affect their ability to seek justice or get restitution. I get that. But when you've got all this side stuff that has absolutely nothing to do with the practice of medicine, the practice of law, and they use it against you, and they use their bully pulpit to smash you upside the head, force you to explain yourself on things that have nothing to do with life and death. It's just gone too far, and I think we've given them way too much power. And thank you again. And so that's Dr. Eric Hensen. And now you mentioned the GoFundMe. What is that GoFundMe, so that if people want to help you with this fight, how can they help you? Oh, did you freeze? Oh, there you are. Okay.
No, I'm right here. Can you see? Okay. Let me see if I can find it for you. It's the www.givesendgo.com/.
Oh, good. I'm glad they're using Give Send Go.
Yeah. So it's givesendgo.com/stop medical tyranny.
There you go.
You get that?
All right. Let me put that up on the screen for everybody. Is that right?
I believe so. Yep. Stop medical tyranny. Yep. Give Send Go, stop medical tyranny. So yeah, that's the yeah.
Please, again, please help. Even if you're not a doctor, you know, as a patient, you could be affected by this. And if we allow these kinds of things to go forward, then we're going to be hurting ourselves. We're hurting our society, and we're hurting the cause of freedom throughout this country. And I'll definitely be following this and helping where I can. Of course, I'm severely limited at the moment, but I feel your pain and pray for your success.
I appreciate it. Thanks, CJ.
All right, Doc. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Y'all take care. Be safe, be free, and we will see you next time.